Good afternoon. I'm Margaret Finley. I'm a council member and mayor from the city of Duarte, California, which has a population of about 22,000 people. I'm delighted to be here. I've never been to Israel before. It's kind of been a lifelong dream, so I appreciate all of you, thank you, hosting us, our delegation from the Southern California Association of Governments, which the acronym is SCAG. I'm sure many of you have never heard of SCAG, so I'll give you just a little bit of background there. We are a region that is actually 5 times the size of Israel geographically. We have 6 counties, 19 million people. That's almost half the population of the state of California. If we were an economy, we would be the 15th largest economy in the world, and we have a $1.2 trillion GDP. So that's a little bit about SCAG. I also would just like to thank my colleagues who are here. Alan Wapner is our president of Southern California Association of Governments. Our first vice president is Bill Yon. I appreciate him being here, and also Randon Lane. He's our second vice president. Our CEO is Darren Shidsey, and our past president, I know she's somewhere here, is Pam O'Connor. So I appreciate them all being here. This is our delegation, and of course, my husband is here and my daughter. And so we're just excited to, and Judy Wapner, and also Mary Jo Yon. So anyway, thank you. Like I said, we are delighted to be here, and we've been to Jerusalem, and we've been floating in the Dead Sea, and so it's been very exciting. So anyway, thank you. You have a lovely country, and you have all been very welcoming to us, so thank you. Everybody thinks of California as big disasters, as earthquakes. Well, we haven't had a really major earthquake in almost 20 years in Southern California. But what we have had is significant drought. And so this has been going on for about the last 10 to 15 years. So the problem there is, even though we do have some water and we can water our lawns, is we have a lot of mountains. I don't know whether any of you have been to the Los Angeles region, but I'm trusting that many of you have. The Los Angeles area is surrounded by mountains, and we have something called Santa Ana winds, and those are probably about 4 to 5 months of the year. Those Santa Ana winds come out of the desert, and then they are very, very dry winds, and so they will blow everything out into the ocean. Now, hold on, let me get this clicker working. Point it at this, point it at this. What do I point it at? Hold on. Just want you to, Okay, there we go. Okay, got one. All right, thank you. Okay, so you can see the size of the SCAG region right there. Now, what happens with these Santa Ana winds is, you can see, these are the 2 fires that we've had in the last 2 years. That we had the Thomas fire, and that lasted for a pretty good number of days, and then also the Woolsey fire. But again, these are all winds that come off of the desert and further dry out the area. So between approximately April 1st and November 1st, we received no discernible amount of precipitation. So what happens then around November 1st, it starts, if we have any type of, whether it's lightning or somebody up there with a campfire, it gets started, and if these Santa Ana winds are blowing, it is bad news. I'm going to go ahead and right now talk about 3 fires. And the first one I'm going to start with is very close to home. Imagine you're asleep, 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's a bullhorn outside of your house saying, "It's time to get out. It's time to get out." That's what happened with us. As my husband and I were asleep, and of course you're thinking, wait a minute, this fire was over 10 miles away when we went to bed. There was no thought that it was going to hit our home. but because of these Santa Ana winds that blow anywhere between 50 and 100 miles per hour, the embers spread very, very quickly. So we evacuated, and it was something in which I will talk about further, but what do you do? Where do you go? Where do you evacuate to? And in cases like the Woolsey fire and the Thomas fire, the roads, the freeways are so crowded with people, where do you evacuate to? You're at a standstill on those freeways. The one I'm going to talk about first after our fire is the Thomas fire. This was devastating. And just to go ahead and go back just a little bit, our fire behind my house was only 5,000 acres. You look here at the Thomas fire, what do we have there? It is huge, 114,000 hectares. Mine was, like 2,500 hectares. So a vast difference. And this lasted for a number of days. I think this was, we said this was 40 days. So huge, huge fire right there along the coast between Ventura County and Santa Barbara County. This is a huge, huge vacation area. But as you can see, it was just nonstop cars. People had to get out. Once again, you can see the roads were packed with people. And because of that area, it's right up along the coast, you don't have a lot of different roads that you can take. There's Highway 101 to go ahead and get out. We toured the area afterwards, and it was kind of an odd area because you had one house that had burned down. Next door to it, the house was still standing. So it was kind of very specific because, again, it's a huge canyon area, so you'll have winds that will hit in different areas. Now, also something that was really important here with the Thomas fire, we said it lasted 40 days. It ended on January 12th, 2018. January 8th was when the massive rains started, okay? So you had rains. These people did not have time to get out K-rails. In our area, and you'll see something at the very end, you'll see in my area, in my city, we put out K-rails in residential areas, which the people hated. Remember, we'd been in a drought situation for 4 or 5 years, and people said, why do we need K-rails here? And we took a lot of political heat for it. Oh, K-rails. You go along the freeway, they're those, they're big, they're big concrete barriers that it will flow the mud flow into a certain area. You'll see them, and it can be devastating if you don't have them. Our fire this year, which was closer to Los Angeles, this was Ventura and Los Angeles County, the Woolsey fire. Again, you can see that's Pacific Coast Highway. It was impossible for people to get out. And the fire, again, is traveling at just Santa Ana winds, 115 kilometers an hour. Again, the Woolsey fire. Now, something that, again, the evacuation along Pacific Coast Highway, it's very limited. But one of the things with the Thomas fire, which again, that was the most devastating fire in California history until the Camp Fire this last year in Northern California. Because of the rains, we lost 21 people. The floods, they're canyons, and they definitely have their houses that are buried. Lessons learned. We have learned a number of lessons here. That is that we need to have better communication. In Southern California, there are 37 countries in the world that the second highest population outside of their countries are in the Los Angeles region, in the SCAG region. So communication is critical, and that's kind of an issue for us because you can't, Cambodian and Thai and Spanish and Chinese and Hmong, all those are are first languages for many people in Southern California. So we recognized that communication was critical. Also, the resource availability. We had to have significant resources, and by that I mean mutual aid. Because of this last year, up in the northern part of California, it was a much larger fire, and so the mutual aid was all going up to Northern California, so the Woolsey fire, they weren't getting it. They didn't have the number of fixed-wing aircraft or helicopters or even firemen to go ahead and fight this massive fire. Recovery has to start immediately. Even while a fire is still burning, the recovery has to be there. And the infrastructure. It's important that these systems get back online as quickly as possible. Now, what does SCAG do here? SCAG is a metropolitan planning organization, the largest in the United States. And by planning, when we are building with our infrastructure, that is going to be critical to getting the region back online as quickly as possible. I was talking with the deputy mayor of Mannheim last night, and we were talking about their old city is right in between the Neckar River and the Rhine River, and he said there are certain areas they just will not allow them to build on. So that's extremely important in our planning, and so SCAG works with the 191 municipalities to help them plan for the future so you don't build too close to a fire area. Resilience planning. As I mentioned, we do have earthquakes in Southern California. Right now, they call her the earthquake lady. Her name is Dr. Lucy Jones. We've been working with her. Up until a few years ago, they were building to a different standard, and that was to keep from having great loss of life during a massive earthquake. Right now, Dr. Lucy Jones has gone up to the legislature with SCAG and said, we need to build to a higher standard, and that standard is so that our buildings don't come down on top of people. It doesn't matter, because what happens regionally is if all of your buildings come down, even though there's not significant loss of life, your region is never going to recover fully. And that's what we saw with San Francisco after the San Francisco earthquake and fire back in 1906. Now, these are K-rails. And I don't know how I start this video, but this was taken about, there we go. This was taken about half a block from my house. And that's a street that mud flow is going down. And I'm standing in someone's front yard. But those K-rails kept all that mud from going into people's yards. And look at the size of the boulders. So the people that were complaining before, they were not complaining when this was all done. And the force of that water moved those K-rails away from there because we had them blocked up there. So I'm just grateful to be here. I know we all have disasters. We have to plan for them. And as a regional organization like SCAG, we have to be able to help one another. So thank you very, very much. I am very appreciative to be here.